Good afternoon, Sean. Why do you think casual moviegoers care so much about the critic score on Rotten Tomatoes? It's crazy to me that they get so mad and say how out of touch critics are. Well, some questions like this are a little bit tough to define exactly who we mean when we mean the casual moviegoer, because that can mean so many different things. Like the casual person on the internet with an opinion. Are we talking about my mom who goes to the movies all the time but doesn't do anything to follow the internet? She goes to the movies probably more than most of you do by a good bit.
I didn't mean to brag.
She just does, she only watches the movie content on YouTube because of me. Otherwise, she just likes to go to the movies, and it's just, what she does. Is that the casual moviegoer? So it's tough to define exactly who we're talking about. Why do you think the casual moviegoer cares so much about the Rotten Tomatoes score on critic score on Rotten Tomatoes? I think the most basic answer to the question is that we all kind of want to have some shared, simple, clear point of reference for whether a movie is worth seeing or not. And for a long time, that was Siskel and Ebert. And you had these two critics that had a television show that was broadcast across the United States and a very clear scoring system. Thumbs up, thumbs down, binary. It's two people making a binary recommendation. So a binary on top of a binary, but there's not a lot of options here. 2 thumbs up, 2 thumbs down, split. That's all we can do with this system. It's very clear whether it's very good, mixed, or bad. That's all we kind of got here. And then you kind of whichever the two that you tend to agree a little bit more for, but it's very clear. We like to have something like that, and it's useful to have something that we're all on the same page with. So Siskel and Ebert starts to go on the decline in the late 90s because unfortunately Siskel died. And then this is as the internet is rising, Rotten Tomatoes is formed. And with time, this aggregate, it's not just 2 people, their recommendation, it's the recommendation of dozens of critics. So you don't need to read dozens of critics, but you get their aggregated opinion from a simple score. And then by now, it's hundreds, maybe thousands of people. Any individual project doesn't have thousands of reviews, but all the wide release stuff has hundreds of reviews on essentially the same binary, thumbs up, thumbs down, fresh, rotten, same idea, larger pool base of recommendations. And we like the simplicity, and we like to have that shared thing that we all agree with. So I think that's kind of the piece that, why is this a thing? Well, we all want a tool that we all look at the same tool to decide, generally speaking, if it's generally recommended. That gets to the next part of the question. It's just crazy to me that people get so mad and say how out of touch critics are. And I think that's where you start to get into when it's not Siskel and Ebert, where there's 2 dudes that you're familiar with both of them. If you care enough to know about, well, yeah, I got 2 thumbs up. You've watched some Siskel and Ebert. You have a flavor for the way each of them leans. And you have a flavor for neither one of them really like this type of movie. So the fact that they don't like any Friday the 13th movies doesn't mean much of anything to you because you knew they weren't going to like it from the get-go. But Rotten Tomatoes replaces 2 personalities you're familiar with a generic percentage that people don't even take the time to understand what it means. I put out a short that just said it's a binary. It's the percentage of critics that recommend the film. That's all it is. It's very simple to explain, and hundreds of comments being like, "Oh, I didn't know that," or people being like, "Well, if people don't understand that, maybe the system's too complicated." It's a binary recommendation. What percentage of critics recommend the film? That is so unbelievably simple. There's no system that could possibly be more simple than that, and people are complaining it's too complex. But the problem is, as a binary of an aggregate of a gigantic pool of people, it's entirely impersonal. So all you see is the percentage without it tying back to people. Like, oh, I know they just don't like horror. Oh, I know that he likes sci-fi. It's just a percentage with no other interpretive fact to it. In which case, when you have enough times when you've loved a movie and the score is lower than you think it should be, that you start being like, they're out of touch. Compounding that is that people don't understand what a 50% means. So they see Man of Steel, a movie that they love, has a 50%, and they go, that's way too low. Or they see Man of Steel has a 50%, and they think that movie sucked, that's too high, not realizing the fact that some of you love it, some of you hate it, is exactly why it has a 50%. It's polarizing. A 60% means 60% of critics agree with the people that liked the movie. But people will see a 60% and they say, critics got it wrong. But 60% of critics got it right. The majority of them got it right. So like, it's just like this bizarre thing where all of a sudden critics become a monolith. We lump all critics together because the tool that we use dehumanizes individual critics, and it just lumps them together into a percentage. And so suddenly critics are out of touch because we're using a tool that turns them into a percentage, and that percentage represents all of them. That's bizarre. It's crazy. There's websites to review movies, and they review movies like based off the Bechdel test. They're not criticizing the film. They're reviewing the film based off of female representation, or other ones based off racial representation. It's entirely valid to discuss films in that fashion, but that's not the same thing as what I'm doing as a film critic, and we're both factored into the same formula. They mean totally different things. Like, I recommend the movie because I thought it was entertaining. They recommend the film because it has good representation. Those are not the same thing, but they're in the same formula. And so the tool itself homogenizes critics into something that is not true at all. We are not homogenous. What we're doing, how we see movies, how we're recommending movies is not in any way in sync. We don't know each other. We don't talk to each other because there's hundreds of them. There's hundreds. I don't know. I know like 2% of Rotten Tomatoes critics, but the score, we're all attached to it. So it's like it's a weird scenario like that. And, you know, we're always looking for excuses to be mad about something, and it doesn't matter that there's a bunch of all the movies that Rotten Tomatoes agrees with us when we're like happy with Rotten Tomatoes, but then we get mad with the one where we loved it and the score was too low. Like we're all pretty peculiar and petty like that. We all do wacky stuff. Most of these clips are pulled from my Patreon live streams. I do about 6 live streams every single month. For $2 per month, $20 per year, you can get access to all the exclusive videos and live streams. For $5 per month, you get your name on my end card. At the top tier, you get a 30-minute video chat with me each month. The link down below in the description has more information.